Still pursuing the dream of yours, huh? Well, what if I tell you that to even stand that chance, you'd have to take steroids? Doesn't sound too appealing, does it? That's a situation I faced when I was a teen pursuing bodybuilding. Here's how I made my decision. My name is Faris Solomon, and I've been playing sports as long as I can remember. And these include water polo, kung fu, bodybuilding. Whichever sport I played, I always tried to be the biggest and the strongest, even if it had nothing to do with the sport. It was like my own mini victory. Back when I was 15, that's when I finally discovered bodybuilding and weightlifting. As if I was looking for a sport specifically for size and strength all this time and I had no idea. So it matched my goal pretty easily. My training routine was 2 times a day. The first was after high school, and the second was late at night, usually the last thing in my day. And in high school, we weren't allowed to use free weights, which was very limiting, for a good reason to be honest, but I needed to find a way to work around it. And so, thought the solution would be to start lifting people. Since I trained with a few friends of mine, I thought I would use them to push against me or straight up lift them while I was using whichever machine I was exercising on. So for example, if I was using the chest press, then I would have it set to max and then I use a few of them to push against me while I'm doing it. Yeah, not the safest approach. It worked really well. Like for example, this is when I was 15 in both pictures. It was just a few months apart. My goal at the time was to surpass whoever was the biggest and the strongest in my age group, which was working when I was 16, 17. I even applied for a Guinness World Record when I was 17 to whoever be the biggest and the strongest in my age group. I didn't know it wasn't a thing to apply for a specific age group. I had a few years primarily dedicated to building muscle mass and strength, and it worked pretty well when I was 17, 18. That's when I decided to start prepping for a competition, specifically a junior division bodybuilding competition. Now, up until that point, I didn't know much about the use of steroids. Felt like being told that someone you admired was guilty of so many wrongdoings. You don't want to believe it. What I did is, I would say, as long as my physique is competitive within my age group, then I wouldn't have to pay attention to it, wouldn't have to consider it. Of course, it didn't take long until I started noticing the gap is widening between my muscle mass and my definition versus the others I was trying to compete against. I still remained focused on my prep to compete. I added an emphasis on cardio, as well as a large deficit diet. I would usually do the cardio on elliptical simply because I can up the resistance, and it would be the best option in terms of burning the highest amount of calories in the shortest amount of time possible. I started with 5 miles a day and sustained that for a while, but a shift happened when I noticed that some of my friends who were more ripped than I was were much more lenient in their diets. And here's the mistake I did. I interpreted it as me not working hard enough. So I would ask myself, why just 5 miles a day? Let's double it. Let's go to 10. Why stop there? Let's double the double and go to 20. Stayed there for a while. Felt like my results weren't fast enough. Guess what I did? Double the 20. So now my program was 40 miles a day. 20 of them were first thing in the morning as soon as I woke up. The last 20 were late at night during my last workout session. I stuck with that routine for a few months, but I definitely overdid it. Ended up losing around 110 pounds and developed some random sharp pains that I would feel in my heart and had to go to a few doctors, and it was established that basically how hard I was pushing myself was the primary cause of it. So I knew I had to take some time off. Now, me losing progress coupled with the competitive gap widening, the topic of steroids became more relevant than ever. So I knew if I wanted to eventually recover and continue as a bodybuilder and succeed at the goals that I had set for myself, I would have to face it. It's either a yes or a no. There is no other way around it. I thought I would have to shift my mental framework in order to assess the risk as objectively as possible and come up with an answer. So what I asked myself is, would taking this decision help or be a detriment to the vision of the life I want to have in the future? And the answer was no, would most likely be a detriment due to all the risks accompanied with using it. Reflecting back on the time I spent bodybuilding and throughout all the other sports, I learned many valuable lessons that I still use to this day. So I thought, why just keep it to myself? Let's share it. First big lesson I learned is that to achieve an extraordinary result doesn't mean you would have to do some incredible amount of work over a short period of time. It can be something simple, something even trivial, but to sustain that, be consistent over a longer period of time is more likely to achieve the success that you want rather than going all in for a short amount of time and then giving up. Another big lesson that I still use to this day is how to avoid burnout. Created my own version of the saying that goes, an unstoppable force meets an immovable object. My version, two immovable objects that are at constant friction. The first one is the belief that I can do it better. And that's not to be expressed outwardly as arrogance, rather inwardly as confidence. But you also gotta be wise enough to differentiate between confidence and delusion. An easy way to tell the difference is by having proof, evidence, a track record that you are who you claim to be. The second belief is simply a question I ask myself. Am I at my full potential? Well, the answer is no, not yet. So that basically results in the two opposing ideas at constant friction, supplying me with unlimited energy to always seek self-improvement at whichever task I'm trying to pursue.